Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, Headliner Nation, welcome back to the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle here with wait for it, for the first time in the history of the NFL, our Week 18 waiver wire video. Sounds really weird to say, but we get a little extra week of NFL action this season. Now, some of you out there, you may or may not be playing for a championship this week. Maybe it ended last week. We don't know that for sure. So we figured, you know what? Let's keep the content flowing and let's make sure that we help out everybody that we can, especially if you're still going to be playing this week. Now, this waiver wire show is going to be a lot different. This waiver wire show is strictly all streaming options, right? We're only worried about guys for 1 week this week. So it doesn't really matter about the rest of the season because there isn't one. So we're just talking about guys that we could stream this week if you're looking to throw someone into your lineup for the final week of your season. But before we talk about those options, we got to do the thing that we've done all season long, right? We got to look back at some of the best comments from the week on our videos with our segment, They Said What? And there's only 2 comments that I'm going to throw up this week. There's only 2 because there's really only 2 that really express the majority of the comments that we've seen this week. And number 1, I'm in a league that goes into week 18, SMH from Travis Knott. Listen, a lot of people were like, oh man, you know, when we made the comments last week about if you're going into week 18 for your championship, you're doing it wrong. A lot of people were like, crap, that's what I'm doing. So I hate playing in the final week of the season. Luckily this week, the good news is that there's only one team that's really like done and locked in, and that's the Green Bay Packers. Everybody else that's fighting for a playoff spot could still potentially move around in some shape or form. So a lot of the teams that are looking to go into the playoffs are not going to be resting their starters. Green Bay may be the only one. So this season we locked out, but we have seen, or lucked out, but we have seen in years past where that has not been the case, where multiple teams have rested players going into that final week, and it really screws with your championship aspirations. Now, the second comment I'm going to toss up is from David Grissom, and he says, in the championship in 2 of my 3 leagues, thanks to you guys, keep killing it. Now, this was one of the first comments that was left on our waiver wire video, which is always the first video that we drop during the week. The amount of comments that we got this week for saying, hey, made it to the championship, appreciate everything from you guys, has been just enormous on Twitter, on Facebook, messages here on YouTube. If you go through the comments and look at the amount of people that said, hey, I made it to a fantasy championship because I used you guys and utilized your information, it's outstanding. So first and foremost, congratulations to you, because you're the reason that you're here. It's not us. We didn't set your lineup. We tell you guys all the time, right? If something gets messed up, it's like, we don't set your lineup for you. There's nothing we can do. We give you the best information possible. But it wouldn't be fair for us to try and say, hey, yeah, we helped you. No, you're still setting your lineup through good or bad. And in the good, you set your lineups. You got yourself here. Now, if we were a small part of that, we greatly appreciate you leaving a message to let us know that we helped in some way, shape, or form this year. And one other thing I want to throw out before we talk about the players, if we have helped you in some way, shape, or form this year, please consider becoming a member here on the channel and helping to support the channel and everything that we do here. Becoming a member gets you a lot of tons of extra content. And it's a great way to continue to help us grow and offer you even more information so we can continue to take this thing to the next level. So congratulations to everyone that's already played in a championship. Hopefully a lot of you ended up winning it. For those of you that still have some time to go though, let's make sure we dominate this week in week 18. So let's kick it off and let's head into running backs first and talk about the very few guys that I might stream this week. Number 1 is going to be Keyshawn Vaughn from Tampa Bay, 4% owned Ronald Jones had an injury ankle and had to leave Sunday's game. So we'll see kind of what the status is, what the update is on him the rest of the way. Leonard Fournette should end up being back at some point in time during the playoffs. Even that first week of the playoffs, he should end up being back. So we'll hope that continues to be the case. But if they're going to be dealing with a Rojo ankle injury, they might say, hey, we would rather just go with Keyshawn Vaughn this week and play it safe and not play Rojo at all. They're going to be going up against Carolina. Ramondre Stevenson from New England at 40% owned. They get Miami this week, and Miami's defense has been really, really tough as of late, especially against wide receivers. You got to bet your bottom dollar that even though Miami had a great finish to the season, obviously lost this past week, dashed their playoff hopes, but snapping off 7 straight wins to really come back and even get in the thing was super impressive. You think that they're going to want to play New England this week, and Miami's going to want to dash their hopes of a AFC East division title? I think that they will. All right. And Ramondre Stevenson, I mean, it's going to be a tough matchup. They're going to be playing each other. It's going to be tough. Ramondre Stevenson, they're going to have to focus on him if Harris has really aggravated that hamstring injury. Again, kind of the same thing. New England's headed into the playoffs regardless. Yes, they're going to want to get ahead, and they're going to want to win this game to win the East, potentially. Potentially is the biggest one there. But if they don't, they're still going to want to be healthy for the playoffs, right? And having Damian Harris healthy is going to be one of those things. So this week against Miami, Ramondre Stevenson could be the guy, and they could say, hey, we're going to take it easy on Damian Harris this week. We'll have to continue to monitor that throughout the week. Duke Johnson from Miami in the same game. Again, just mentioned it. Miami's going to want to play New England tough. They're not going to just sit down and lose this thing. This is a tough team to pass against, talking about New England. So Duke Johnson could really see an increased role back to what we saw a couple of weeks ago. Now, this past week, he only ran the ball 7 times, but he did have 49 yards and another 3 targets. But it was a blowout loss, so they stopped running the football. If this game can stay close against New England, I expect Duke Johnson to get about 15 total carries. Jarrett Patterson from Washington going up against the Giants. This is a great opportunity for Patterson again this week, but will Gibson be back? That's going to be the thing that we need to keep an eye on, is if Antonio Gibson will end up being back this week. Patterson looked good this past week. He had 57 yards on 12 carries with a touchdown, and he caught all 5 of his targets for 41 yards. Boston Scott from Philadelphia going up against Dallas. Now, this is a risky play, but even with Jordan Howard healthy and active this past week, Miles Sanders is not expected to play this week already. So because of that, Boston Scott is a decent play. Jordan Howard, when active, Boston Scott still led the team all over the place. Snaps, carries, everything. So Boston Scott is really that lead guy still right now, and he's getting touches at the goal line, which is always big. Not a whole lot of upside last week. Didn't do a whole lot, but he scored 2 touchdowns. So did end up giving you 12 points right there off the bat. This week, going up against Dallas, Dallas has been one of the better run defenses all season long. I expect that to continue to keep up this week, but if they can get down to the goal line, Boston Scott has a legit chance to score you a touchdown. Now, hopping on over to wide receivers. Cedric Wilson from Dallas. Unfortunately, Gallup does have another injury, and he's going to end up missing again, and it's just super unfortunate to see that with Michael Gallup. He was going to be heading into free agency, and we'll see what that does for him. But that's going to allow Cedric Wilson to step back up, and Cedric Wilson is going to become another one of those options. Now, am I playing him against Philly this week? Probably not, because last time Michael Gallup got hurt, we saw a lot of Dalton Schultz. So I do expect Dalton Schultz to have a good week this week. I don't really expect a whole lot of Cedric Wilson because we still have Amari Cooper, still have CeeDee Lamb. So for me, Cedric Wilson is kind of like an emergency stash. Donovan Peoples-Jones from Cleveland, they're going to be getting Cincinnati. Cincinnati, as well as they are playing, they've allowed the 7th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. So the secondary has had some issues stopping some bigger plays the last couple of weeks. Marquez Callaway at only 30% owned going up against Atlanta. Atlanta's allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. New Orleans still playing for a playoff spot. What's that going to turn into this week going up against an Atlanta team that, would love to play spoiler? Could it come out and play them tough? But it doesn't matter. They're going to have to throw the ball a little bit, and Marquez Callaway could be that guy going up against an Atlanta secondary that has allowed points all season long. Allen Robinson's going to sneak in here as a streaming option this week. Andy Dalton, being the starter, targeted him 6 times last week. Now, is that a whole lot? Not a whole lot. Darnell Mooney still had the better day, but it's always good to see that First game back off the COVID list. Hopefully this week will be a little bit better for him, and it is a Minnesota team that allows the 6th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. So the main goal with all this is finding good matchups. If we're streaming guys this week, we're finding matchups that will allow us to maximize points. AJ Green from Arizona at 42% owned, going up against Seattle. Only 3 receptions on 6 targets last week, but it did turn into 74 yards. Did a good job against that Dallas secondary. Now they're getting a Seattle secondary that is a little bit more susceptible to the big plays that AJ Green has been showing up at times this season. So AJ Green for me is another option for us to stream this week. And Zay Jones from Las Vegas at 4% owned. The Chargers, they've had a good pass defense this year, but over the last 4 games, they've struggled a little bit. Okay, they're giving up some plays. Zay Jones has 4 straight games with 7+ targets. Now, the great thing about this game, the Chargers and the Raiders are playing for win or go home. That's right. Whoever wins this game heads to the playoffs. Whoever loses is headed home. For the tight end position, there's only 2 options for me this week. John Bates from Washington. Ricky Seals-Jones went down with an injury after crashing into the camera last week, like a neck-back injury, crashing into the camera. So John Bates should be the guy this week again. And Foster Moreau, 26% owned against the Chargers. The Chargers do allow the most fantasy points to opposing tight ends, but I can't really trust him. He's had good matchups as of recent, hasn't really done anything with them. So both of these options are super, super risky options for me. Neither of them I'm super excited about. If you don't have a tight end this week, you're going to be in trouble. Now, if like a Tyler Conklin is out there, maybe Nicole Kmet, but those guys in a majority of leagues are over 50% owned still. So trying to find tight ends that are under 50% owned that I trust this week was a risky, or was not a great adventure for me. There wasn't a whole lot of options. Now, let's jump back to quarterback and talk about some streaming quarterback options. I've got 3 this week. Ben Roethlisberger being the first one, going up against Baltimore. Baltimore forcing a couple of interceptions last week against Stafford, but they're still allowing the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks over the last 4 weeks. So that defense is still one that is not playing that well. This has been Big Ben's last game. Is this his last hurrah? More than likely his last game, 100% with Pittsburgh. Is it his last one overall? I'm going to pick Ben Roethlisberger to come out and have a decent game this week. Jared Goff, if he ends up getting back this week, he gets Green Bay. Green Bay could be sitting all their starters. They've wrapped up the 1 seed in the NFC. They can't get any better at this point. They have the first round bye. Yeah, they might play their starters a little bit in the first half just to make sure that they aren't, taking basically 2 weeks off and then trying to play. But I don't expect them to be out there the entire time, especially on defense. Jared Goff, if he's back, he could end up being a great option. Could start off a little bit slow, but in the second half, really get moving. And Derek Carr from Las Vegas, again, going up against the Chargers, win or go home. Derek Carr with the LAC defense kind of struggling over the last few weeks, especially against quarterbacks. Yeah, he might turn the ball over a couple of times, but there is going to be an opportunity for a lot of big plays going up against the Chargers this week. On the defensive side of the ball, this one's really, really risky, but Detroit against Green Bay, again, a team that could end up sitting a lot of their starters this week. Maybe it's just for the, 3 quarters. Maybe it's the entire game. Maybe it's the second half. Now, if they come out and say we're sitting guys the entire game, Detroit's defense at home, last game of the season, we've seen them play tough against good opponents this year at times, all right? They've shot, Arizona a few weeks back, right? Now, a Green Bay team that's basically all reserves, there could be worse options. Not many, but there could be worse options. Washington going up against the New York Giants. The Giants managed 24 passing yards last week. I threw for more yards in 10 minutes on my Oculus than that. Come on. So, for Washington, going up against the Giants next week, a little bit of a streaming option there. That offense has just been garbage as of late. And Tennessee, my number 1 streaming option, for some reason, they're still under 25% owned at this point, only 23% owned. They've got Houston. Tennessee is playing for the 1 seed in the AFC. They're currently the 1 seed. They win. They lock it up. They're headed to a first-round bye, which is absolutely incredible given the injuries and things that they've had happen to them this year. Over 80 different players used due to COVID at one point. So Houston's not going to get by them. Tennessee is going to come ready to play, and part of that is going to be their defense, creating pressure, forcing turnovers, and really just limiting the entire Houston offense. Short video this week, chat. really short video this week. There's not a ton of options. Again, we're not looking at a ton of guys moving forward throughout the entire season. We're just looking at a few guys here and there that we can stream in week 18. So just wanted to throw those guys together for you. It's a little bit of a quicker video. For those of you playing this week, good luck. We'll still have start and sit and rankings and all the good stuff. There won't be a live show on Saturday night, but I'll still be live for a members only stream on Sunday morning. So make sure you check that out. Become a member this week if you can and you're willing and able. And as always, make sure before you get out of here, you hit the like button on the video if you appreciate the content. You leave me a comment down below. Are you playing in the championship this week? If so, are you going to be grabbing any of these guys to use? And if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, you got to hit the like button, or you got to hit the subscribe button. Stick around for all the great off-season content that's going to be coming your way very shortly. Appreciate everybody tuning into this video. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.